What if the very thing you've been doing to make it happen is the exact reason it keeps slipping away? Sounds unfair, doesn't it? You work harder, repeat affirmations, watch the clock, push circumstances, and yet nothing really changes. And deep down, you feel that quiet frustration. Why does it never stick for me? Here's the paradox Neville Goddard exposed. Control doesn't bring manifestation, it blocks it. The more you try to manage the how, the louder you tell your subconscious, it's not mine yet. And reality, being a perfect mirror, simply echoes that back. That's why you end up running in circles, chasing results instead of receiving them. But imagine if the pressure to control wasn't necessary at all. Imagine if the truth was that creation is already finished, and your only role is to assume the end. That one shift could dissolve years of struggle in a moment. Because the real secret isn't in control, it's in surrender. And in this video, you're going to see why your effort has been backfiring, how Neville Goddard's teachings cut straight through the illusion of control, and what it actually takes to let manifestation flow to you naturally. By the end, you'll never look at trying harder the same way again. Most people live in a silent war with reality. They wake up already tense, thinking about what needs to be done, who they need to convince, what deadline they must meet. It feels like life is a giant puzzle where they must push every piece into place with sheer effort. But deep down, this frantic need to control exposes a wound. Fear that things won't work unless they force them. Think about it. How many times have you caught yourself checking the clock, refreshing your phone, or obsessing over when something will happen? That's not patience. That's control disguised as responsibility. And control is heavy. It steals peace, drains energy, and makes life feel like an endless treadmill where you run hard but never arrive. People say, if I don't take control, nothing will move. But notice how exhausting that belief is. It's like rowing a boat against the current all day, every day. You might move a little, but you're worn out, bitter, and doubtful at the end. The paradox? The harder you try to hold life in your hands, the faster it slips through your fingers. Neville Goddard's teachings point directly at this hidden struggle. He didn't tell people to stop acting or planning. He told them to stop forcing. Why? Because controlling every step means you don't trust the law of assumption. It means you haven't really assumed the end. Instead of living in the end, you're living in constant chase mode. Imagine a gardener who plants seeds and digs them up every hour to check if they're growing. That's what control looks like. The seed of assumption was planted, but fear keeps unearthing it, interrupting the natural process. Growth doesn't respond to control, it responds to surrender. The same is true for manifestation. This hidden struggle shows up in small, everyday moments. A text not answered right away. And suddenly you spiral, what if they're not interested? A bill comes in and you instantly calculate 10 scenarios to make it work. That mental habit of trying to micromanage life is what chains you to stress. And stress is just another name for disbelief. The truth is, control creates the illusion of safety, but it actually reinforces the idea of danger. If you feel you must control, you're silently saying, I don't believe it's already mine. That's why Neville Goddard emphasized conscious creation through the power of assumption. Because only assumption dissolves the desperate urge to manage everything. Picture this, someone trying to train a bird by holding it tightly in their hands. The bird won't sing, won't move, and might even die from the grip. Freedom comes when the hand opens. In the same way, your inner world opens when you stop clutching at circumstances. That's when imagination creates reality, without strain. This hidden struggle of control isn't about laziness versus discipline, it's about fear versus faith. One keeps you checking, doubting, and trying to manipulate the bridge of events. The other lets you rest, trusting the unseen. One contracts, the other expands. One delays, the other accelerates. And here's the subtle irony. The moment you stop trying to control, you begin to feel the first taste of freedom. That's when surrender becomes strength. That's when manifestation truth begins to unfold naturally. But of course, that raises the next question. If control is the trap, what does it really reveal about what you believe? Neville Goddard was clear about something most people overlook. The very need to control is already proof that you don't believe. If you assume the wish fulfilled, there's nothing to manage, nothing to beg, nothing to push. Control then isn't strength, it's hidden weakness. It's the subconscious whispering, I don't trust it's done yet. Think of it like ordering at a restaurant. When you trust the waiter, you don't storm into the kitchen every 5 minutes to check on your meal. You sit back, talk with friends, enjoy the moment, knowing the food will arrive. But if you keep pacing and demanding updates, it only shows one thing: you doubt the order was taken seriously. That's what Neville Goddard teachings confront. When someone tries to manipulate how their manifestation will arrive, it's a confession. They haven't really surrendered to the end. They're still stuck in the vibration of lack. To live in the end means the meal is already on its way. You don't need to check, you don't need to interfere. Control is subtle, it doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes it wears the mask of being responsible, checking bank accounts 5 times a day, obsessively scripting, overanalyzing signs. All these behaviors sound proactive, but Neville would call them disbelief in disguise. Because belief rests, disbelief meddles. And here's the sting: every time you try to control, you're not just doubting, you're affirming to your subconscious that the desire isn't real yet. That's why Neville called assumption the only bridge worth walking. Because if the assumption is true, then your job is done. If you're still working, still forcing, you're living in contradiction. Some people hear this and think, so I should just sit and do nothing. Not at all. Neville never preached passivity. He taught conscious creation. The distinction is subtle but crucial. Acting from the end is natural and inspired. Acting to make the end happen is born of disbelief. One flows, the other fights. Let me put it this way. Control is like trying to row upstream with all your strength, while assumption is like catching the current and letting it carry you. Both involve movement, but only one requires endless effort. Which one sounds more aligned with the truth that imagination creates reality? There's also an emotional cost. Control breeds anxiety, tension, and frustration because it keeps you hyper-aware of what hasn't happened yet. But assumption breeds peace, calm, and even joy because you're already dwelling in the outcome. Which inner world do you think produces faster manifestation truth? Neville's warning is simple. Stop controlling manifestation. Every urge to manage is proof of disbelief. When you catch yourself doing it, don't panic. Just notice it. Recognize it for what it is. A signal that you've slipped out of assumption and back into doubt. And awareness itself begins to shift the state. Because if control reveals disbelief, then letting go reveals faith. And faith, in Neville's words, is nothing more than feeling the end real. But that leads us into another layer. What actually happens inside when you keep trying to manage and control? Trying to control every detail might feel like discipline, but spiritually it screams, I don't have it yet. That's why Neville Goddard insisted that control is never neutral. It's a vibration of lack. When you micromanage manifestation, you're not affirming possession, you're reinforcing absence. The subconscious reads control as proof of incompleteness. Think of someone constantly checking their phone after sending a message. Every glance isn't trust, it's fear. In the law of assumption, each thought and feeling is a seed. The constant need to verify results plants only one thing: doubt. Instead of living in the end, the person keeps living in not yet. It's like trying to inflate a balloon while simultaneously poking holes in it. You might blow with all your effort, but your actions cancel themselves out. That's what happens when you pray or visualize, but then immediately try to control the outcome. The subconscious doesn't hear words, it hears states, and control is the state of lack. Neville Goddard teachings highlight this paradox beautifully. You assume the end, but then fear sneaks in and you start helping the process. That very help is sabotage. It's like telling the universe, I don't think you're capable without me. But manifestation truth is the opposite. Your role is inner assumption, not outer micromanagement. Consider a farmer planting seeds. If he believes the soil will do its work, he waters, tends, and rests. But if he doesn't, he digs every day to see what's happening underground, and by doing so, he kills the growth. Control sends the same signal to your inner world. You don't trust the soil of imagination to bring results. And that distrust is heavy. It creates cycles of anxiety. Wake up hopeful, spend the day forcing circumstances, go to bed frustrated, repeat. Many people think they're practicing conscious creation, but what they're actually practicing is conscious doubt. The energy of not yet echoes louder than their affirmations. The vibration of lack is sneaky because it disguises itself as being realistic. People say, I'm just making sure everything is lined up. But what they're really doing is feeding the state of absence. Neville would remind them, assume the wish fulfilled means it's already lined up. Your only task is to dwell there. Here's the key. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It mirrors your dominant state. If your actions come from control, your state is, it's not mine yet. and reality faithfully echoes that back. That's why Neville's phrase "feeling is the secret" matters so much. What you feel dominates over what you say. So when you notice yourself trying to control, don't judge. Just recognize it as proof that you've slipped into the vibration of lack. Awareness lets you shift back to assumption, because control never speeds things up. It only delays. Resting in the fulfilled state is the only real acceleration, and once you see this clearly, the next paradox becomes unavoidable. The more you push, the more resistance you create. Which is exactly why effort doesn't equal progress in conscious creation. It often equals the opposite. The harder someone pushes, the further the result seems to drift. That's the paradox of effort. In the physical world, we're trained to believe more effort equals more reward. Work harder, grind longer, and you'll get ahead. But in the realm of conscious creation, Neville Goddard teachings flip this idea upside down. More effort often means more resistance. Imagine trying to fall asleep. The more you try to sleep, the more awake you become. That's exactly what happens in manifestation. Effort is like tossing and turning in bed. It keeps you stuck in the state of struggle. But surrender, that quiet letting go, is what finally carries you into the dream. Neville used to say that assumption works like a seed planted in the subconscious. Once it's planted, your job is not to keep digging it up. It's to trust. But most people, out of fear, keep working the soil. They visualize harder, affirm louder, or chase more techniques. Yet all this effort just proves they don't believe creation is finished. Think of effort as static noise on a radio. The more you force the dial, the harder it becomes to hear the music. But when you gently let it settle, the signal clears on its own. That's how the law of assumption works. You don't grab the signal, you tune into it. And tuning requires stillness, not struggle. This paradox also shows up in relationships. Ever notice how chasing someone pushes them further away, but resting in your worth magnetizes them back? It's not manipulation, it's state. Effort screams lack, while assumption whispers fullness. One clings, the other attracts. That's why assume the end is more powerful than endless trying. Effort comes from fear. If I stop, nothing will happen. But fear is a liar. Reality doesn't manifest because you sweat. It manifests because you dwell in the right inner world. Feeling is the secret, not working yourself into exhaustion. Life doesn't rearrange because you force it. It rearranges because you believe it's done. And here's a personal story. I once met a man who said he affirmed for hours every day, but still felt empty. When I asked him why, he admitted he was doing it to make something happen. That's effort, not assumption. The moment he shifted into short, calm, imaginal scenes, everything changed. Without the grind. So here's the paradox. Effort delays what surrender delivers. The bridge of events cannot unfold naturally if you keep interfering. It's like standing in the middle of traffic trying to direct every car yourself. The flow already knows where to go. You just need to step aside. And yet most people resist this truth because it feels counterintuitive. How can doing less bring more? They ask. But that's the mystery Neville revealed. Imagination creates reality, not effort. It's not about how hard you work, it's about how deeply you assume. And when this paradox finally sinks in, another principle rises like a lighthouse in the fog. Creation is already finished, which changes everything about how you see manifestation. Neville Goddard taught something so radical it still shakes people today. Creation is finished. Every possibility, every outcome, every version of you already exists in the unseen. You don't make it happen, you assume it. When you try to control manifestation, you deny this truth by insisting it's still incomplete. It's like tuning into a radio station. The music is already playing whether you listen or not. Your job isn't to create the broadcast, it's to align with it. Conscious creation works the same way. The state of wealth, love, health, or peace is already playing in the field of possibilities. You only need to live in the end to hear it. When someone refuses to believe creation is finished, they work endlessly forcing results. But the more they force, the louder they declare, it doesn't exist yet. That's why Neville insisted that imagination creates reality, because what you imagine with feeling isn't building, it's selecting from what already is. Picture a massive library. Every book is already written. You don't write a new story, you pick one and start reading. Manifestation truth is the same. When you assume the wish fulfilled, you're just opening the book that already holds your story. Control, on the other hand, is like trying to write in the margins of a finished novel. This principle frees you. If creation is finished, then lack is an illusion. What you want is not on the way, it already exists. Your role is not to chase, but to surrender to the end. And the power of assumption is the bridge that carries you there, without struggle. Think of video games. The ending is already programmed into the disc. You don't invent it. You unlock it by playing from a certain perspective. That's how conscious creation works. Your choices, feelings, and assumptions don't build the ending. They reveal the version that was always available. When people hear this, some resist. But if it's already finished, why do I feel lack? Simple. Because you're tuned into the wrong state. You're living in not yet instead of the end. Neville Goddard teachings point out that your inner world determines which version of reality you perceive. The state you occupy decides the outcome you meet. Creation being finished also explains why forcing doesn't work. If it's already complete, what are you trying to add? Control is just arguing with the truth. It's like yelling at a movie projector to change the ending, when all you need to do is play the reel that already has the scene you want. This realization can bring a deep peace. You no longer need to chase, beg, or manipulate. You only need to choose. Feeling is the secret because feeling is how you choose. Every assumption is a silent selection, pulling an unseen outcome into your visible experience. And once you see creation as finished, the next step becomes clear. If force isn't required, what is? The answer is surrender, not in weakness, but in the strength of trust, which leads us directly into the heart of manifestation. Feeling is surrender, not force. Neville Goddard's voice was steady when he repeated this truth: feeling is the secret. But he didn't mean feeling as in straining, crying, or forcing emotions. He meant surrender. To feel the end real is to rest in it, as naturally as slipping into a warm bed after a long day. It's not work, it's release. Most people confuse feeling with effort. They think, if I push hard enough emotionally, I'll manifest faster. But real conscious creation isn't about squeezing tears out of your eyes. It's about quiet assurance. Feeling is like breathing. It flows when you stop controlling it. Force blocks the breath. Surrender frees it. Think of how a child imagines. When a child plays pretend, there's no forcing. They don't argue with themselves, asking, but is this real? They simply step into the role. That's what Neville meant by living in the end. Assume the wish fulfilled with the innocence of play, not the heaviness of effort. Surrender is often misunderstood as passivity, but in Neville Goddard teachings, surrender is the most powerful act of all. It means dropping the illusion of control and resting in the truth that the outcome already exists. It's the quiet power of saying, it is done, and then living from that calm inevitability. When you feel the end, you're not begging, you're dwelling. Begging says, please one day. Dwelling says, I am there already. The energy is completely different. One vibrates lack, the other radiates fulfillment. That's why stop controlling manifestation is the greatest shortcut. Control proves doubt. Feeling proves faith. Let me give you an analogy. Forcing is like clenching your fist to hold water. The tighter you grip, the less you keep. Surrender is like opening your hand under a stream. The water naturally rests in your palm. Feeling works the same way. Open, relaxed, surrendered states hold reality far better than strained ones. Notice that when you really believe something is yours, you don't chase it. If you truly trusted your paycheck was coming on Friday, you wouldn't refresh your bank account every 10 minutes. You'd feel calm, maybe even excited. That calm confidence is the essence of surrender in manifestation truth. And here's the beauty. Surrender doesn't mean doing nothing. It means that whatever you do flows from the state of already done. You can act, move, or speak, but you're not pushing. You're expressing. It's like dancing to music instead of trying to force the rhythm. Life becomes movement without struggle. Many resist surrender because it feels like losing control. But Neville flips it. Surrender is the ultimate form of control, the control of state. You don't command the outside world. You command your inner world. And from that command, reality has no choice but to follow. Once you grasp this, the question becomes, how do you actually practice this surrender in daily life? And that's where a simple yet profound technique comes in, letting go into the end. Neville Goddard didn't just teach concepts, he gave practical methods. One of the simplest and most powerful is this. Imagine a short scene that implies fulfillment, feel its reality, and then let it go. That's it. The practice isn't about length or intensity, it's about conviction. 5 seconds of truth outweighs hours of strained effort. Picture yourself at the end of the story. If the wish were already fulfilled, what moment would prove it? Maybe it's a hug, a handshake, a text that says congratulations. Choose something brief and natural. This is what Neville called living in the end, where you select the scene that implies completion, not the process. Once you have the scene, close your eyes and gently play it in imagination. Don't force the picture, let it come alive. Add feeling. What would the relief feel like? The joy, the calm certainty. This is how the inner world communicates with the subconscious. Remember, imagination creates reality, not strain. But here's the key most people miss. Release it. Let the scene fade after you feel it. Don't cling. Don't repeat it 100 times out of fear. That grasping is control, and control is disbelief. To assume the wish fulfilled is to trust that the seed is planted. Now the soil, the subconscious, will do the work. Think of it like sending a message in a bottle. You write your wish, seal it, and place it in the ocean. Once it drifts away, your job is not to chase it. Your job is to know it will reach the right shore. The bridge of events, the invisible chain of circumstances, will carry it. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means resting. If you truly believe creation is finished, then you can relax. The technique isn't about bending reality to your will. It's about aligning yourself with what already exists. And alignment requires trust, not interference. Some people say, but what if I'm not feeling it strongly enough? Neville's answer was simple. Intensity doesn't matter. Acceptance does. Even the lightest touch of faith can move mountains if you release it. It's not the drama of the feeling that counts, but the quiet certainty behind it. And here's where many trip up. They finish the scene, but then spend the day checking for signs, worrying about time. That undoing cancels the seed. The real mastery is learning to walk away smiling, as if the outcome is inevitable. That's what Neville meant by surrender to the end. Try this tonight before sleep. Choose your scene, feel it real, then drift off as though it's already yours. The subconscious in that drowsy state is most receptive, and when you wake, resist the urge to check, just walk in calm assurance. That's how you train the power of assumption. And when you begin to live like this, you'll start noticing something, the subtle signs that show whether you're still letting go, or if you've slipped back into control. Most people don't even realize when they've slipped back into control. It feels normal, like being careful, or staying on top of things. But Neville Goddard's teachings expose these patterns for what they really are. Disbelief dressed up as responsibility. So how do you know you're still controlling? Let's look at the signs. First, the constant checking, refreshing your bank account, counting views on a post every 10 minutes, looking at your phone and thinking, why haven't they replied yet? These little habits whisper the same message. I don't trust it's done. If you were truly living in the end, you wouldn't need to keep checking. Another sign is timing anxiety. You find yourself obsessing over when things will happen. Instead of resting in the feeling of completion, you're on edge about deadlines, calendars, and clocks. But Neville reminded us, the bridge of events unfolds in its own way. Control never speeds it up. It only slows you down. Frustration is another indicator. If you get angry when results don't appear quickly, it's proof you're not assuming the wish fulfilled. You're bargaining. Living in the end doesn't argue with time. It rests in certainty, knowing that creation is finished. Frustration means you've slipped back into the inner world of lack. Some people also obsess over techniques. They jump from one method to another, convinced they need to do more for manifestation to work. But constant searching reveals disbelief. Neville's point was clear. A single imaginal act, fully accepted, outweighs 1,000 restless attempts. Depth, not quantity, is the secret. Control also shows up as comparison. You see others manifesting faster and think, why not me? That's a vibration of absence, not fulfillment. True conscious creation doesn't peek over the fence. It stays anchored in the chosen state. Comparison only proves you've left the state of the wish fulfilled. Doubtful self-talk is another red flag. Catching yourself thinking, maybe it's not working, or what if I did it wrong, is just the mind's way of yanking you back into control. But imagination creates reality. Not your doubts, not your logic, not your timelines. Every time you argue with yourself, you're undoing the assumption. Even over-preparation can be a disguise for control. Planning endlessly, rehearsing conversations, or scripting scenarios just in case might look wise, but it's rooted in fear. True assumption doesn't need contingency plans. It rests in knowing the end is already secured. And here's a big one: emotional roller coasters. If your mood rises and falls depending on whether you see signs, you're still trying to control. Signs aren't proof. The state is proof. When you're anchored in assumption, your inner peace doesn't wobble with appearances. You already know it's done. Once you start recognizing these signs, you gain freedom. Awareness lets you catch yourself in the act of control and gently return to assumption. And that brings us to the real shift: how to replace control with calm inevitability. So if control is the vibration of lack, what's the alternative? Neville Goddard's answer was simple: assumption. Not assumption as wishful thinking, but as the calm certainty that the end is already yours. It's not "I hope" or "I need." It's "I am." Assumption doesn't fight circumstances. It rests in inevitability. Replacing control begins with noticing the urge to interfere. Every time you feel the impulse to check, push, or worry, stop. Ask yourself, if I truly believed it was done, how would I act right now? That question alone shifts you back into alignment with the law of assumption. Living in the end isn't passive, it's active faith. You walk, talk, and think as though the wish is fulfilled. If you assume wealth, you stop speaking like someone broke. If you assume love, you stop reacting like someone desperate. The inner stance changes first and the outer world follows naturally. Neville Goddard teachings often stressed this subtlety. It's not about pretending, it's about embodying. Pretending feels fake, embodying feels inevitable. Control keeps you rehearsing outcomes in fear. Assumption lets you rest in the finished picture, confident the bridge of events will unfold perfectly. Think of an actor who has already rehearsed the final scene. They don't worry about the middle lines, they know the ending is secure. That's assumption. It lets you move through daily life without clinging to every detail. The power of assumption turns your steps into echoes of a future already secured. One practical shift: instead of checking for signs, check your state. Don't ask, has it happened yet? Ask, am I dwelling in the end? That one reframe replaces anxiety with sovereignty, because the inner world is the true cause, and imagination creates reality from there. It also helps to build rituals of calm inevitability. For example, start your day with a single sentence: "It is done." Say it not with drama, but with quiet confidence. Like brushing your teeth, it becomes habit. Over time, that simple practice rewires your subconscious to accept the fulfilled state as normal. Replacing control also means replacing hurry with patience. Neville said faith is loyalty to the unseen. That loyalty looks like staying steady when nothing shows up yet. Control panics in silence. Assumption rests in silence. One collapses under waiting, the other finds power in it. Here's the beauty. When you adopt assumption, your actions shift naturally. You don't stop moving, you just stop forcing. You answer calls, take opportunities, and engage with life, but without desperation. Every step carries the calm undertone of inevitability. That energy is magnetic and people feel it. And as you begin to embody this way of being, something surprising emerges. A sense of freedom you may have never felt before. Because you finally realize you were never meant to control the how. You were only meant to assume the end. There's a deep relief that comes when you finally stop trying to manage everything. It's like exhaling after holding your breath too long. Neville Goddard's teachings point us here. Freedom doesn't come from control, it comes from surrender. Because surrender isn't giving up, it's choosing to live in the end with trust. When you surrender, you're not weak, you're aligned. You're saying, I believe creation is finished and I no longer need to fight for what's already mine. That inner release changes your state instantly. And since imagination creates reality, the world simply reflects that freedom back to you in ways that feel effortless. Think of someone floating in water. If they thrash, they sink. But if they relax, the water holds them. That's surrender. The current of life knows where to carry you. Control only tires you out. Freedom is realizing you were designed to float, not to drown in effort. This freedom also shows up emotionally. The constant pressure of making it happen dissolves, replaced by calm expectancy. You stop fearing silence and start resting in it. That's conscious creation at its core, dwelling in the wish fulfilled without anxiety. The inner world feels lighter, and the outer world responds in kind. Surrender doesn't mean doing nothing, it means doing without resistance. When opportunities come, you take them joyfully. When challenges appear, you don't panic, You remember the end is secure. This is the law of assumption in action. The end is assumed, so the steps along the way lose their power to intimidate. And here's something subtle. Surrender brings creativity. When you're no longer strangled by control, imagination flows freely. Inspired ideas, unexpected connections, even playful humor emerge naturally. Freedom makes room for life to surprise you with solutions you never could have engineered. Neville often reminded his students, "Assume the end." That one phrase contains the seed of freedom, because when the end is secure, everything else becomes play. You're not fighting reality, you're enjoying the unfolding of a script already written. That lightness is the essence of spiritual awakening. Freedom in surrender also heals relationships. Control pushes people away. Assumption draws them closer. When you no longer need someone to behave a certain way to feel secure, you actually become magnetic. Others sense the peace in you, and that peace becomes irresistible. The ultimate gift of surrender is rest. Not laziness, but rest in truth. The manifestation truth is simple. It was never your job to control the how. Your only task is to dwell in the fulfilled end. And once you let go, the bridge of events does what it's designed to do, carry you there without strain. And that's the hidden irony. The freedom you were chasing through control was never found in control at all. It was waiting in surrender, which leaves us with the perfect doorway into the bigger conversation. Why trying to control it is exactly why it's not working. So now the question is, how much of your life has been spent trying to push, control, and force outcomes that were never yours to manage in the first place? And what would happen if, starting tonight, you chose to rest in the end instead of fighting for it? Neville Goddard's teachings make it clear, your inner world is the only place creation begins. Control is a confession of doubt, but assumption is a declaration of faith. Which one are you practicing daily, doubt or faith? If you truly believe creation is finished, then your only task is to feel it real, assume the wish fulfilled, and live in the end as though it's already yours. That shift alone can turn years of struggle into moments of effortless alignment. So I'll leave you with this. Are you ready to stop controlling manifestation and finally surrender to the freedom Neville spoke of? The answer to that question could change everything about how you experience life. And if you want to keep diving deeper into the power of assumption, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay connected, because every week we unfold more of these truths, and each one has the power to unlock a new dimension of your life.